What's up, YouTube? This is Big Mike. Well, Jason Williams, not the Jason Williams who blew away that limo driver some years ago. Not the power forward, but the point guard. He recently criticized Charles Barkley for Charles Barkley's criticism of Kevin Durant for going to the Golden State Warriors. He basically said that Kevin Durant should have his own life to choose, his own, whatever makes him happy in life. He shouldn't live for others, which I agree with. He shouldn't. He basically said that Charles Barkley didn't have the luxury of free agency when he was playing to make that choice, and that basically he tried to call Charles Barkley a hypocrite because the fact that he joined the Houston Rockets later on in his career, and he also called Charles Barkley a loser. Said the teams didn't want him because he was a loser. Now, this is what I gotta say about Jason Williams. Jason Williams was one of the most overrated players in the NBA when he played. All right, I remember when he got in the NBA. I think it was 90. What was it? 98, 99. I think it was the draft. Not draft. Excuse me. It was the strike shortened year, 98, 99. I think that's the year he got into the NBA, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, excuse me. They try to compare him to players like Pete Maravich and Bob Cousy. He was this revolutionary ball handler. And all I saw when I watched Jason Williams was an inefficient turnover machine who every now and then would make the highlight reel with a nice play here or there. That's what I remember. Now, over time, he did vastly improve in his assist to turnover ratio and turnovers per game. He really did improve. Now, that I'll give him that. But he was always an inefficient shooter. He shot less than 40% for his career. He was a prolific three-point shooter in as far as attempts he made, but he was never a great three-point shooter for a point guard, shooting less than 33% from beyond the arc. And he only averaged 10 points per game for his career. So he was never a superstar. And I don't think he was really ever an all-star. But he was in the 2016 Miami Heat. They won a title. I think, if I remember serving correctly, he shared point guard duties with a fading Gary Payton. And he was able to win a title playing on a team with true legends like Dwayne Wade and Shaquille O'Neal and borderline legend Alonzo Mourning. That's the truth. Now, he criticized Charles Barkley for joining the Houston Rockets in '96. I've said this time before, and I'll say it again. These are the true comparisons, all right? Let's compare the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Houston Rockets. Excuse me, the Golden State Warriors and the Houston Rockets in '96. All right? The Philadelphia, getting ahead of myself with that one. The Golden State Warriors are all in their primes, all right? Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Stephen Curry. They're all in their primes. Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler were not in their primes. Hakeem Olajuwon was 33 years old. Clyde Drexler, I believe, was 34 years old. They were not in their primes. Matter of fact, Clyde Drexler hadn't been the same since that devastating knee injury back in March of 1992, if I remember correctly. He hadn't been the same player since. He was still effective, but he wasn't. He went from being a 27, 28 point per game guy to being more of an 18, 19 point per game guy. by that time. Actually, by that time with the Houston Rockets, he was more of a 17-point per game guy. Still an effective player, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't the same guy. And Olajuwon finally was starting to show his age that prior year, 95, 96. Finally, he was starting to slow down. And we would see it subsequently over the next few years, he was declining as a player, slowly but surely. So that's the thing. And even with that, Barkley had a huge impact for the Houston Rockets, because the year prior to Barkley joining the Rockets, I think they went 48-34. I think the year when he got on the team, they went something like 57-25, something like that. At least 57 wins, maybe more than that. So it was a net of 9 wins. Kevin Durant's leaving a team that's a championship contender and had made moves to improve. Phoenix was declining as a team. Okay, they were declining. Kevin Johnson, I believe, was going to retire. He had vowed to retire by age 30, and I think he was getting ready to retire. All right, Dan Marley was gone. I think I might be off a little bit, but I think Paul Westphal had been fired that off season when they went 41-41. Many other people on that team, Richard Dumas, for instance, had gotten so many different issues. Looked so promising that 92, 93 season, earlier seasons. He was having substance abuse issues, and his career was unraveling. All right. Well, who else? Alvin Miller was having issues with his weight. And I think at the time he got traded to the Toronto Raptors or something by then. That team was not the same. They were rebuilding. Charles Barkley did not want to be part of the rebuilding process. So, yes, he did request a trade to go to Houston Rockets. But they weren't 73-9 and coming off a championship and a near championship. All right? So that's the big differences. Also, to call Charles Barkley a loser is ridiculous, because if you're going to call him a loser, then you got to call Reggie Miller and John Stockton and Karl Malone and Patrick Ewing. All these guys are losers only because they didn't have the luxury of playing on the same team as Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Magic, and James Worthy, Kareem, Larry, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish. Okay, and Barkley just joined the Rockets a couple of years too late, if you want to put it like that. That's just the way it is in the NBA. If you aren't part of certain teams, you're not going to win a title. Because this is an indisputable fact, and I'll end the video with this. With the exception of the 1970s, in the NBA, if you weren't part of certain teams, if you weren't on a couple of teams, you were shit out of luck as far as winning titles. In the late 1940s, if you weren't part of the Philadelphia Warriors or the Baltimore Bullets, you weren't winning a title. In the 1950s, if you weren't part of the Minneapolis Lakers or the Boston Celtics or the St. Louis Hawks, you weren't going to win a title. In the 1960s, if you weren't part of the Boston Celtics, you weren't going to win a title. In the 1980s, if you weren't part of the Boston Celtics, the Philadelphia 76ers, or Los Angeles Lakers, or the Detroit Pistons, you weren't going to win a title. And in the 1990s, if you weren't part of the Detroit Pistons or the Chicago Bulls or Houston Rockets, you weren't going to win a title. And the Houston Rockets, that mid-period of time when Michael wasn't playing. In the 2000s, if you weren't part of the San Antonio Spurs, if you weren't part of the Los Angeles Lakers, okay, the Detroit Pistons, all right, or that Celtic team that year, you weren't going to win a title. And right now, if you're not playing with Stephen Curry, if you're not playing with LeBron James, you're not going to win a title. That's the undisputable fact, no matter how great a player you are. So it's stupid to sit there and criticize a player, calling him a loser because he won a title, because there's other factors involved. The 70s was the only decade I can think of where there was true parity.